I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration on my 3D grass and 2D grass, how it blends in and out between the two. So pretty much a while back when I started my game, I'm not going to talk about my game at all, but I'm just going to showcase my grass and just use an environment from my game to do so. But when I started working on my game, I always had this idea of like, well, how can I achieve doing dense, like actual grass that you would see on a field or something in real life, and have that playable in a game to where it's not too expensive? Is there any way to optimize that? Any way to balance that? Could it be done with particle effects? Could it be done with static mesh actors all over the place? Or what would it be to achieve that? And I knew, even back then, even though not as experienced as I am now, I knew back then, just from my game design experience before, that trying to do something like that would cost a lot of frames and probably be very impractical. So a few months ago, working on my environment here, building this park, I tried it out, and it's like, well, let's see what I can do to make that happen. I don't know a whole lot about the material editor, but I'm sure I can dig something up and do some creative experimentation, dicking around in the material editor and looking up stuff online and see what I can do to make it happen. And so I kind of started it and kicked it off, and now I finally have pulled off the effect that I've been looking for this whole time. So this is pretty much what it looks like. As you get closer, from a certain distance, it will fade into the 3D grass in a nice soft way, and the 2D grass is roughly similar to the 3D. It's just kind of more of a basic, I guess, kind of quintessential rendition of what the 3D grass is kind of more or less going to look like. I might update it a little bit because it does look a little bit splotchy. Like there's a lot of dirt patches on the 2D grass compared to the 3D, where it's got a little bit less splotches, but that can be fixed in the future. So yeah, basically you have your 3D grass model, and it's a foliage actor that you paint on the terrain, just like with any other foliage actor. And it will essentially just pop in pretty harshly on its own, just with the foliage actor settings, that are already there. But with some clever material work, I can blend how the color and the normals of the 3D grass, fade out and kind of blend with the color and the normals of the terrain to where it gets a very seamless blend. And that's pretty much what you're seeing here. And then I also have a way of projecting, downward on both the grass, the 3D grass and the 2D grass. I can project a color mask that I can use to lerp off two different colors, so I can have, the grass fade to more of a dry yellow, dead grass, and then go to more of a rich, lush green grass, and have that fade. And it projects down on both the 3D grass and the 2D grass in the exact same position from the absolute world position. So on both those UV coordinates, it's exactly the same, and it just gets a nice kind of pop in. So it's not two different textures I have to paint two different times or anything like that. It's just a nice projection from World Z that will just kind of come down as a color mask and colorize it. So yeah, performance-wise, really quick. It is a little bit slow. It's about 30 to 40 frames right now in full screen, but my computer, I need to note this so people don't think this is a terrible idea, doing this kind of grass, because it's too costly. People need to know that my computer's like 5 years old. So, I got an earlier i7, I got DDR3 RAM, and I got a video card that's like $200. So on a more professional build, which is what I'm designing my game to look best on highest settings, which this is, pretty much almost on highest anyway, it would run much better on someone else's more modern computer. So almost everything's on highest, and I get about 30 to 40 on my PC, but I don't want that to discourage anyone from trying this out for themselves, because, you can calibrate so many different things to get it to run smoother. I have a number of graphic settings in here for draw distance and foliage density, so I can knock down the foliage, make it more patchy, and it looks a lot more splotchy this way, and it will save some frames. And you can kind of see a little bit better how it blends with the splotchiness there. It's a little bit more obvious, kind of the pop in. It's still nice and faded, but you can see a little bit more what's going on. I like to keep that on highest, and then I drop the view distance down to something smaller, so even dropping it down one setting will drastically improve the performance. So this is what it looks like on far. So a little bit more obvious that it's happening because it's not as far off, but it still is a really nice blend. I probably need to calibrate these a little bit more so that they're, depending on what setting you're on, the edge brightness near the edge of the grass will look a little bit different, so it can fade out on different settings a little bit better, because it is a little bit darker of an edge, a little bit more obvious. Just got to calibrate that a little bit. And on nearest, this is what it looks like. So that's what it looks like in the closest setting. And it still fades pretty good. If you didn't move, it's pretty hard to notice it, even on the nearest setting. You can kind of more or less see what's happening there and how it's blending out. So yeah, that's kind of how the grass works. with different graphic settings that I can scale. So that's back to the highest setting there. And yeah, so that's more or less what it looks like as far as a demo is concerned. So this map is still work in progress, by the way. I still have a lot of work to do here, but never mind that. I'm just trying to showcase the grass right now, not the actual environment. So if I go under the hood really quick as part of the demo, I can talk a little bit more about what's going on. So if I go into the grass material instance for the actual 3D grass, I can kind of break down how it works a little bit there, do a little bit of a demo. So I got the grass fade brightness, I got power, I got the fade texture scale, I got the overall brightness, and then I got the offset and the scale for the projected terrain normals. So basically the overall brightness brings everything up and down, so that will adjust the overall brightness for everything. Oh, never mind, this isn't the overall brightness, this is the fade brightness. So this controls as the grass fades into the 2D grass texture, this is pretty much the brightness level of that texture. So 1.68 seemed to be the best texture, or the best value I can get, to where it looked pretty seamless. The power is pretty much how harsh the fade is, so the smaller the number, the more gradual the fade is in the radial kind of distance. I think 3 is a pretty good compromise, because you can see a lot of the 3D grass for a while, and then near maybe like the last 10-15 feet, as it starts to fade out, it will start to blend out pretty evenly. If I push it too much higher, like 10, maybe even 5 a little bit, anything higher than 5 towards 10 and stuff, it will make that edge a lot more dark naturally, just because the normals are clashing a bit more. You have the flatter, kind of more distant, blurred LOD levels of the flat terrain mixing with the pixels, not the pixels, but the geometry and the normals that are being shown on the 3D grass, and it just kind of makes it harsher of the texture there. And so I figured that 3 is a pretty good compromise to kind of blend that in pretty linearly. I can do 1, the lower you get, the more faded it will be. But the problem is, if I do too low, like 1, you have to be pretty much right on the grass, otherwise it starts to fade away. So even like, 10 feet away or so, 5 feet away, it will start to fade out a lot of its values. And it is a bit more subtle on 1. I guess it's a little bit more, transparent the way it blends in, which is kind of cool. But I figured 3 is a pretty good compromise. So that's what it looks like on 3. And then the texture scale here, the grass fade texture scale, is the same number that the terrain uses, and that's just the projection of the terrain kind of diffuse and normal map that's being projected down on the grass, but only displayed on the edge. And that's to synchronize the texture with the terrain. So if I scale this to something smaller, you can get an idea more or less what it is. Actually, never mind, the smaller is the more detailed, I gotta go bigger. So I go like 5,000 or something. So now you can see this is the terrain texture kind of projected onto the 3D grass near the edge, and that's how it fades. I'm not using opacity at all to do fade because it's too expensive, and so instead it's just blending the normals and the diffuse near the edge of the grass itself to match it perfectly with the terrain's normals and texture as best as it can. And that's pretty much what it looks like. So both of those on the terrain material and the grass material has that same exact math and the same exact scalar parameter at the same value, and that way it'll project them both the same. And that's how you get the perfect fade that kind of transitions into the 3D grass, is it's just taking the 2D grass from the terrain at the same coordinates, the same scale, the same color, thanks to the brightness setting being synchronized, and just kind of projecting that down onto the 3D grass to get the best possible blend that you can that will fade into the 3D grass. And overall brightness is exactly how it sounds, so I can just crank that up and it will bring everything up at once. So that now you can see pretty much how the 3D grass is actually blending in. It's very harsh, like I said, there's no transparency, it's just texture trickery, optical illusions that makes it work. So that's what it looks like there, compared to 0.6. So in 0.6 it's very, very hard to tell. Unless you actually can see the 3D grass pop in around edges, it's pretty hard to tell that it's happening. And then texture offset and texture scale basically control the normals from the terrain, which looks like this. So I just export the terrain out, reduce its geometry so it's easier to work with, so it doesn't have like 100 million polygons or some shit jumping off. And I just bake out a normal map of it against a plane, like model, and project it, it bakes it onto the plane. And then I just bring that to here and basically take this normal map texture and just project it down onto the 3D grass, while also combining 40% of its natural vertex normals so that it can still have some natural shading and give it like a 3D effect, so it can still have some dark and lights from lighting. And then I'll project the terrain's normals over the top of that, so that it can light up and darken and stuff wherever the slope does on the terrain as well. So if I have a dark kind of ridge on the terrain, it will get a dark ridge on the 3D grass as well. And there's a lot more that goes on under the hood to make that stuff work, but because this is a demo and not a tutorial, I'm just kind of talking about it more than I'm actually showing. I just want people to understand more or less kind of what's going on. So yeah, I project the terrain's normals down. I project the grass, diffuse, and normal map down from planar Z, from world coordinates rather than tangent space coordinates. So if I move the terrain right now, the grass would actually stay in the exact same place. So if I moved it like this, you can see that as the terrain moves, the texture on the terrain stays in the exact same place because it's being projected from a world position rather than a tangent space position, by like how it default does. Obviously, I don't want to keep that setting. So yeah, anyway, it projects from the world position from Z kind of downwards onto the terrain to get its texture for both diffuse and normals, and it takes that exact same projection, that same texture and normals, and projects it down the same values on the 3D grass, and that's how you kind of simulate a fade effect without using opacity. So it's not opacity that fades it out, it's just blending textures together and normals together based on having the exact same coordinates kind of fade or project onto both of them so they can be in the same position, and just kind of fades out that way. So yeah, that's kind of a breakdown of what's going on. If anyone really wants an in-depth tutorial, I can probably do that. It'd definitely be a bit longer than this demo, but that's kind of more or less how it works as far as the demonstration goes. So might be more videos in the future, but I just wanted to show this off. I really am impressed with the effect I got here, and it's something I've wanted since the beginning of my game to achieve doing 3D grass. So I'm really happy I was able to do that, and do it in a way that I can scale it as well, so I can get better performance or better quality, and decimate it or reduce the density if I so choose, and all that stuff. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. See ya, man.